right, everybody, we're back.
We're back. Welcome back, everybody, to Father Ted Talks. I am, of course, joined by Father Ted Paraskevopulos. Say hello to your all of our friends. We haven't seen everybody in so long.
Yeah, and I'm not sitting on a beach like you.
Yeah. So this beach, I'm Tina Crevice, and this beach behind me happened by accident, but I actually think it's a happy accident because it's putting me in a very good mood.
Your digital background.
My digital background. This is the first beach I've seen in a very long time.
Yeah.
But I'm hopeful it won't be very long before we can all see a beach again.
Seriously. Yeah. As we record this is Saturday now, the 28th, and this will be airing on Sunday. We wanted to do a live show, but it just didn't work out with all the craziness that's happening. And I know it's been a long time since we did a show. That wasn't on purpose as well. As we all know, as soon as the churches reopened and we started getting busier again, of course, sacraments started. So, we usually film or have our live show on the weekends. And we just couldn't do it. We couldn't do it because there's just too many everybody wants to get their baptisms in and their weddings in before the winter and before another possible lockdown. And since now we have another lockdown, we had a little bit of free time to pre-record this show. Maybe the next week we will actually do a live one. But we're glad to be back and doing another show. So
very glad. So having said that, my perma plug is to please send us your questions to FrTEDTalks@gmail.com. We have a couple of questions today, but we'd love to hear your questions. I'm sure you have some related to everything that's going on right now. But now that we're sort of locked down and can't be back in church, as Father Ted said, we thought we would start answering.
Okay, so just as a clarification too, because a lot of people have been asking me about this. It's kind of weird. We kind of can't be back at church and we kind of can. And what does that mean? Is that right now, at least if you're in Toronto or Peel region, which is also Mississauga, right now the restriction is 10 people. And so that effectively kind of shuts us down, because the reality is that for me to run, for example, a full liturgy on a Sunday or on a weekday, I have like 5 staff inside, right? Like me, the chanter, the help in the altar, the secretary, the board member. We need to have people on staff to be able to, just for health and for safety purposes, for the flow of traffic and things like that, sanitization, all that kind of stuff, right? So because we have all these things we need to do for public health and safety, that only allows another 5 people to come in. So it's kind of like, well, how do you choose 5 people out of hundreds that come to at least my parish or all the other parishes, right? So we are streaming live on YouTube again. I just started doing it this week, ever since the lockdown started on Monday. And we do allow up to 5 people to come in. It's not a lot. It's first come, first serve. If they come in, they can come in and stay. But that, you can imagine, that kind of will fill up immediately. And, people can come in and light a candle and leave, like one by one. We can manage that flow. But essentially, yeah, it's almost a full shutdown like the first time around, only by a few more people, right? So that's what we're doing here. We're doing the best we can. But essentially it shuts us down. Yeah. So
essentially shut down, but thankfully we have this technology that we can engage with people either via TED Talks and, like you said, the Sunday live feeds, which is fantastic. And I know a lot of people are engaging that way. So that's
our Sunday school. Don't forget, we're also doing we're doing live Sunday school online. So I'm just basically reading Bible stories to the kids. It's better than not having anything. And 100%. So we've been doing that. It's all on the Father TED Talks channel is one thing, which you guys are watching now. But of course, St. Constant and Helen, if you want to see if your kids want to watch see some Sunday school videos made by myself, you can watch it there. You can also see our church programs at the St. Constant and Helen Greek Orthodox Church YouTube channel as well.
Amazing.
They're the plugs.
Yeah, there are all the plugs for now, which we will repeat at the end. So let's get into some of the questions we have. And this one is, this first question actually is funny. I had never thought about this, and it's actually sort of relevant to me now. But a person has a question that has to do with selling their home. So it says, we are preparing to sell our home, but a few questions have come up. We have noticed that nowadays, some people seem to be uncomfortable around religious items. Even though we don't want to hide the fact that we are Christians, having some item in the home is off-putting to some people. What is the best way to handle this?
Yeah, that's a tough one, right? In the sense that, well, it's not tough from a religious conviction point of view. Of course, as Orthodox Christians, we should never be afraid to display our faith. And I've got this question many times before, actually. Like, people say, I'm prepping my home to sell it. And, a lot of people, a big thing now is to stage your home, fix it up nice and make it look, the optics, of making it look like a professional staging. So that doesn't look like kind of like the homey place you've been living in for like 20 years or whatever, 15 years. So people do that to kind of make it look nice and, enticing for people to buy. And there's nothing wrong with that per se. As far as, specifically taking down religious items before staging so that you don't offend people, it's a very hard thing, right? Because you're trying to balance, being proud and being, not afraid to show your faith, but at the same time, understanding that we live in a multicultural society and that, not everybody appreciates that, or the person buying your house might not be a Christian. They might not be a person who likes that. And it might affect your ability to sell your home. I don't know if it's a betrayal of your faith if you take that stuff down. I personally would not, because that's just me. I would just basically take a practical approach. I'd be like, okay, well, if I'm staging my house, then I'm probably going to move all my stuff out of it anyways, and then just leave. Or if you have a professional staging company coming in, it would just be set up in a neutral way. But that's not me hiding the religiosity of my family per se. That's just me getting all my private stuff out of there, my own, family pictures, all my personal stuff, getting it out of there and just kind of have this neutral canvas where people can like stage it properly. I don't think that's a betrayal of my faith per se. It's hard. I would say just go with your conscience. Like, I don't think the issue is trying to hide the religious aspect of it, right? Because like there's some people who are religious and there's some people who are not, and there's some people who don't really care, like, what's going on, what was there before, right? So really, it's a mixed bag, and I just think that it all depends on your own personal motivations. Like, if you're hiding it because you are ashamed, then maybe that's something you need to look at and discuss with your spiritual father, and maybe over discuss with your family. But if you're just practically moving all your stuff out and then staging it so you can sell it without a thought of hiding the religious aspect of your family, I don't think that's an issue. It's not like you're betraying your faith, right? I don't know if that's a very clear answer.
I think it is. And do you mind if I share a personal anecdote for this? So, first of all, I've been to many homes, I was looking for my own home, and often you'll notice like a mezuzah on the door of the Jewish families, which is like a little symbol on the door that they have. They don't remove them, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think the key word that you said there was, it's not a betrayal. I think, my aunt and uncle are currently selling their home, and the stagers came in and said, you got to take this, this, and move this. And at the end of the day, it was kind of hard for my uncle, telling me what to do and telling me what to take out. And what we said to him was, everything is a choice. You don't have to remove these things if you don't want to. This is just their professional opinion. And if you don't want to, you don't have to. And I think that key word, and I wrote it down, was betrayal. I don't think if you're taking it down because you're ashamed, then that's one thing. But if you're taking it down because you're going to be taking things down anyway. I also just wanted to share that it's funny. My son is sitting next to a little girl in school whose family is very religious. Her father is actually a priest. And so he often comes home saying things that this little girl says about God and things like that. And I said that to the mom, and she kind of said, we don't really share with people that we're Christian because it doesn't seem very popular. And my son said that he actually feels very alone at the school being a Christian. And I said, please share with him that we are also. And so the reason why I'm sharing that is because I think sometimes we worry about what other people will think about our Christianity, but you might be pleasantly surprised.
Sure. Yeah, it's a mixed bag, right? My parents recently sold their condo and went to a rental, and the person who bought it was a Christian, and so they had no issue with my parents. Like, my parents staged it, but I think they still did have some religious items out, and that was actually a selling point for the people who came in. So really, that's what I mean.
You might be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, I don't think we should think about always overanalyze these things. I think we just focus on the practicality of it. It's like, I'm going to clean up my house. If I leave it in, I leave it in. If I don't, I don't. God usually finds and sends the right people at the right time.
Yeah, I mean, if taking down your iconostasi means you're going to have holes in the wall and you have to paint the house and that's a practicality, but I really like the way you phrased it. Okay, here's another question, bit of a pivot here. So there is a tradition to pour out the water of the baptism bath in the garden in a place that will not be disturbed. Is this cultural or religious? And as we cannot guarantee what the new owner will do at that place, what should we do?
Oh, this is, yeah, because it's from the same person that I think
Yes.
was asking about selling the house. So it's a religious tradition. It's not cultural. We've talked about this, I think, in some previous shows where, how do you dispose of religious items, or especially like liquids and things like that are blessed, like holy water, holy oil, things like that. And so we've said in the past that the most respectful thing to do is to dispose of them into nature and not into the garbage. Why? Because it's disrespectful, to throw an icon in the garbage, and then you have the image of Christ, which has been venerated, going to a landfill, right? Or pouring, holy water or holy oil into the sink where it goes down into the sewage where human waste goes and things like that, right? So this is the idea that it's not that it's like the biggest sin in the sense that you're trying to defile these things, but we're trying to be respectful. So the most respectful thing is to kind of like pour holy water or holy oil into a garden or the foundations of a house, somewhere where it kind of seeps into the ground, into the earth, into like nature. And so when you do those things, especially with holy water, things like that, I think it's, listen, we bless our homes, right? It's the same question as when the priest comes at Epiphany season and blesses our homes, something that I don't know if we're going to be able to even do this year, unfortunately. But you're going to bless your own homes. You'll get the water and bless your own homes. Are we not selling that house after it's been blessed? Of course, we're selling that house. Again, it's not like a sacrilege to say, well, now I've blessed this house and now somebody else is going to come and live in it and they might defile it or something like that, or who knows what they're going to do with the land. That holiness has gone into the earth. It's gone back into nature. All things are God's creation. And I don't think we should think beyond that, what will happen. Of course, there's possibilities that, bad things could happen on that property or whatever, right? We don't know in the future what will happen. All we know is that while the land is under our care, we are stewards of that particular parcel of land. Let's say it's our home or crops or whatever it is, or a farm, and while it's under our care, we bless it and we sanctify it and we offer it back to God. And that's what we do while it's in our care. And when it's not in our care anymore, when it's sold to someone else, then it's under their care and we have to let go of it and move forward, right? The same thing happens when you have a church, for example. There are some cases where, churches are usually built to be a place forever, right? But there are some instances where churches either get destroyed, burned down.
Church, for example.
Yeah, get moved, right? They get transplanted because maybe they get too big and they can't fit the place where they're at. So what happens in those places? Well, they take down all the religious items and they kind of empty out everything they can. But if you sell a small little church and you move to a new location so that your church can grow, well, obviously whoever buys that land is going to tear that down and build something else. It's not ideal because that's hallowed land, and we've been doing liturgies on that place, and it's a sanctified spot. So it's preferable that you don't. But when it does happen, then you try to focus on what you've been given by God and what you're responsible for. You can't be responsible for everybody else's choices and what they're doing, right? So I would say, bless your home, take care of your home, make sure it's a place of prayer, and when it's time to move, or if that time comes, you leave as respectfully as possible, and you give it up to the next people, and you pray to God that they are respectful of it as well.
Yeah, and then in the question, it says that the place is not to be disturbed. My understanding was that you're just returning the water or the icons or the image to the earth, not necessarily that it cannot be disturbed, because in all likelihood, it will.
That term is the idea that nobody's walking there. Like, so, you don't want to pour holy water on a
front door
sidewalk.
Yeah.
People are walking and trampling upon it. So it's like a place
where a part of your garden
usually will not trample and things like that. That's what it means to not be disturbed. Doesn't mean that they can never dig there or things like that. Like, it's not a literal kind of thing, because and I'll give you an example. It's like when we build buildings, we do groundbreaking ceremonies. And even in the Orthodox, we have the blessing of the foundations of a church or the foundations of a home or the foundations of a building. And, they go to the construction site and the priest will go there, or the bishop, and there'll be a blessing. And they bless the land and they bless the foundations and they bless the dirt and they bless everything. And then what happens is the bulldozers come in and they disturb, right? It's not like, it's not a literal thing. This idea, it's more like a place where it's not going to be defiled, or, you're not going to do, people are not going to be walking on it or spitting on it or doing things like, that will be defiling. That's the idea, right?
Gotcha. And as a side note, it looks like with Epiphany coming and the likelihood of home blessings not happening, we will either have a separate chat or at least one question around that time about how to bless your own home.
Well, yeah, I plan on doing a separate video dedicated to that, because, as it looks, chances are we won't be able to, because even if the current lockdown is lifted, it's not going to be lifted to like a free-for-all. It's going to be lifted like in stages as usual. And of course, it's going to be discouraged for example, one individual, the priest, to go to like hundreds of homes, right?
House to house to house to house.
It's not prudent either for the priest, but also for the multitude of elderly people that you would be visiting, right? It's like, then you could definitely become like a super spreader, just go everywhere, right? So yeah, like chances are I'm not going to be going to multiple homes, because it's just not, I don't think it's very wise right now or safe for the public. And so, because it does involve going in and out to a lot of different places. Like I still visit obviously the sick once in a while. That's different than like visiting like hundreds of people in 1 week, right?
Yes.
But that doesn't mean you can't bless your own house, and there's a way to do that. And of course, we'll dedicate a whole video to that. So look out for that one in the future.
Stay tuned.
Yeah.
Okay, so this next question makes me sort of sit up straighter and check that I'm not have a double chin showing in the video. It says, what is the church's attitude towards cosmetic surgery?
Well, that's an interesting question.
Mm-hmm. See, look, I'm trying to sit up a little straighter now.
My double chin is protected by my beard.
Yeah, I need one of those.
Yeah, there you go. So this is kind of like a contentious issue in modern society, just because so many different forms of cosmetic surgery that exist today, plastic surgery, all these different types of things. And, everything from, drastic stuff that we used to see back in the day, like augmentations and things like that, nose jobs, things like that, to little things that people do today, like,
fillers,
fixing your eyebrows, to, all this kind of weird things that I didn't even know about, but, now I do, unfortunately. So, I think I'll speak from an Orthodox point of view. I think that everything, like, so I used to have a professor in seminary, and he used to say that, he used to say words are words and things are things. And what he meant by that was that the thing itself, whatever it is, whether it's a surgery, whether it's food, whether it's whatever, things are things, right? They're neutral. But the use of things and the reasons why we do things is what matters. It's why we do things, right? So it's like, you have a knife in your house, right? Well, you can use a knife to cut bread, or you can use a knife to hurt somebody, right? The motivation, the person who wields that thing is what, we look at as Orthodox Christians. So when it comes to surgeries or medical procedures, or even cosmetic surgeries, it really depends on what is the motivation behind it, right? And why do I say that? It's like, obviously as Orthodox Christians, we're trying, and obviously we all struggle with it. I struggle with it immensely. We try to cultivate humility in our lives, right? And humility comes with the understanding of that who we are in relation to God, who we are as creations of God, and who we are in relation to other human beings, and being content with the things that we have, the way we are, right? With all our beauty and all our imperfections, right? And being understanding that, God, number one, God loves us. And then also there are also other human beings in the world that love us, and we show love to them. A big cornerstone of Christianity is humility, and also the acceptance of the other as they are, because understanding that we are also flawed. So we don't expect the other to change for us, because, or it doesn't mean we don't want them to progress, and just like we don't want ourselves to progress and become better, but we don't impose an expectation. It's just, we accept us, Christ accepts us as we are and helps us to elevate us, and we're supposed to do it with other human beings. So when it comes to cosmetic surgery, I find that usually it's done for two different purposes, right? So, and that can be anything from like reconstructive surgery, to cosmetic surgery, augmentations, things like that. There are two main kind of reasons why one would do some type of cosmetic surgery. One is for kind of like just personal reasons. You want to look better, right? You're not happy with a certain part of your body and you want to change it to make it look better. And then the other thing would be for some type of medical reason, and there's lots of reasons for that. There are people who get burned, for example, and they have disfigurement and they need to do skin grafts, and they need to do some type of cosmetic surgery to fix it. somebody breaks their nose, like in a fight or something, or in an accident, or there's an accident and they need to do cosmetic surgery to create some type of semblance of, normalcy in their face or their body. Even when people speak about like other more controversial things like breast augmentation, things like that, there are people who have like, breast cancer, right? And a big part of that is being able to give women and men sometimes, because there's even breast cancer for men, to give them a semblance of normalcy, right? So there is cosmetic surgery in those cases where it helps a person become whole again, and to be able to remove a stigma that might be causing them psychological pain or even physical pain. So I think we have to separate between, the motivations, right? From an Orthodox point of view, I'm hesitant to judge what people's motivations are. I don't know. I don't know what their motivation is. And so I try not to think about it. I try not to guess. It is what it is. But I would definitely say that it would be good for us to push towards an acceptance of our bodies as they are, right? In the sense that, this is the way I look, and I shouldn't, what is the drive behind augmenting things that don't need to be augmented, let's say for medical reasons, and what is purely vanity, right? So that's hard. That's hard to kind of decide, like to discern within ourselves, and a lot of times it requires the discussion with the spiritual father or with somebody else to kind of be able to help us work through that. I don't want to be doing things that are completely selfish, that are only for vanity, like just I want to look better. And of course then you can say, well, where do you draw the line, right? Like, where do you draw the line on vanity, right? Is coloring your hair vanity? Is piercing your ears vanity?
Yeah.
Is lipstick vanity? Is, a man wearing nice clothes vanity? Is it like trimming my beard in a certain way that it doesn't look too crazy or bushy? Is that vanity? There's always an element of vanity, right? But I think we try to find a balance in our
Do you
lives.
think the person who asked the question also may have asked it in another, so that sense, obviously the vanity sense, but also in the sense that, like, for example, about tattoos, that were a tattoo alters the body that was given to us by God and is in his image. Do you think there's also that angle?
All of this, I think, applies under all the same kind of mentality, right? I always ask people come in and ask me that question all the time, especially with tattoos. And they say, oh, Father, is it the devil to do this and this and that? And is it bad? And I always ask the question, I say, why are you doing it? What is your motivation behind it, right? And once you start asking you those kind of questions of yourself, then you can maybe try to discover, okay, is this a good motivation or is this a bad motivation, right? Is this going to lead me towards salvation? Is it going to help me with my relationship with Christ? Is it going to help me with a relationship to other human beings? Or is it going to hinder me? Is it going to make me more egotistical? Is it make me more vain? Things like that. So these are always a question. Personally, I can't speak for other human beings, but personally, in my life, I find that when these kind of questions come up, should I do this? Should I not do this? If I really take the time to stop and think about it, like most of the time it's vanity for me, right? If I really ask myself the question, do I really need to do this? Do I really need to buy this? Do I really need to, it's usually because it's just a selfish endeavor. Like, do I really need this, right? And so it takes time to kind of get used to questioning oneself in that way. But I think it's also healthy, right? To kind of keep us grounded. And so it doesn't matter whether it's tattoos or other augmentations or any kind of cosmetic surgery. I think the question is, why are we doing it? And I think there's some cases where it's needed. And I think there's a lot of cases where it's not.
And this comes up in almost every Father Ted Talks. And I think this is a real benefit to these videos that we're doing, is that I think a lot of times we assume that there is a blanket solution. And again, my biggest pet peeve is with this yayology that we've been passed down. We have to do this, or Yaya said this is, and what is revealed in a lot of our chats is that what we should be looking towards is a relationship with our spiritual father, and having these discussions, that it's not just a blanket solution.
Sure.
It's much more, our faith is much more interactive and participative than I think we even realize. And that's, I think, a beautiful thing that is coming out of these chats that we're having.
Sure. Yeah, the cultivation of discernment is one of the key virtues, right? And discernment is very difficult because, it's taking basically the core tenets of our faith, which are not many. The belief in God, the belief in the Holy Trinity, the belief in Jesus Christ, the God incarnate, that died and suffered and was crucified and then resurrected on the third day. Those are the core tenets of our faith. And then when you take those things and applying them to different situations, the love of the neighbor and things like that, that's where the discernment comes in. And that's hard because it requires an amount of self-awareness and humility that is constant. You have to keep yourself always in check. And most people, what we prefer to do, I know I prefer, we like black and white answers, because if you give me a blanket statement, then I don't have to work on myself. I can just say, hey, you know what? This is the rule. I follow the rule. I'm a good person. And that's much clearer and easier to do, but it also requires a lot less work on the self. Because then I give over my responsibility. I say, well, the church told me to do this and I did it, regardless of whether it was right in that situation or not, regardless of whether I understand it or whether I'm acting out of humility or love for the other human being. I just did the right thing, and therefore I get the brownie points. Well, that's not how it really works.
It means a lot less work, period. It means you can just walk into a church and walk out, right? Like I said, what I'm learning as I get older is that there's a lot more interaction in our faith than I ever realized growing up. And I think that's a beautiful thing. Sure. Speaking of beautiful things, we're coming up to December 25th, to Christmas time. And so the last question we have today is about the Nativity. And it says, why do we fast for the Nativity? Isn't it a happy preparation?
Okay. Yeah, I'm assuming they're asking about, in contrast to, for example, Great Lent, which is much more somber.
Yeah.
For Easter, for Pascha. So yeah, it's not fasting is not a punishment, right? So sometimes people they connect the deprivation of certain things as a type of punishment. So we fast for Lent because Pascha is, of course, the most joyous. But we have the crucifixion, we have Holy Week, and we have the Passion, and so maybe we should think about that. No, that's not why we fast. We don't fast to punish ourselves, nor do we fast to make ourselves feel bad about something that we've done or something that mankind did. But rather, the fasting, as we've said before, is a type of self-discipline to be able to prepare for a feast. So we prepare for multiple feasts during the year with fasting. So that we can truly appreciate, cleanse ourselves, focus on the spiritual, not the physical, and also prepare ourselves for the feast, right? So, one priest had one told me, sometimes when kids, it's almost dinner time and the kids will ask for a snack and the parents say, no, you can't have a snack because you're going to spoil your dinner, right? And the reason why they say that is they don't want them to, eat something, and then they'll be full, and then when it comes to dinner time, they won't appreciate the beautiful meal that their parents put together. And in some way, fasting is very much like that. This idea that if there is no sense of deprivation, there is no sense of kind of like calling and slowing down all our our indulgences, right? All the things that I'm hungry, I eat. I want to get this, I get it, right? But kind of putting a certain type of struggle in place where I do not participate in certain things, so that when the feast does come, I can be much more grateful of what has been given to me and really appreciate it. I think that's really important within the fasting season. So even with Christmas, of course, we prepare for the great feast of Christmas by fasting and leading up to it for 40 days, just like we do for Pascha. And then when the feast comes, then we feast, right? So there's fasting and then there's feasting, right? One of the things I discussed, I think I had mentioned this in one of my sermons a while back. I don't know if we ever talked about it on Father TED Talks, but we talked about how difficult it is right now in North America, but all over the world, but especially here with the culture that we've kind of adopted, that we've lost that whole rhythm of fasting and feasting, because everything now leading up to Christmas is feasting. Like we've reversed it. So it used to be in the old days that you would fast for 40 days and you would lead up to Christmas. And then when Christmas would come, you would have the feast of Christmas and Epiphany. So Epiphany is January 6th. It's linked to Christmas. It is the advent of Christ, right? So Christ is being born on December 25th, and he is being baptized and starting his ministry on January 6th. These 12 days of Christmas, like the song, on the first day of Christmas, that song, it comes from the 12 days of Christmas, from December 25th to January 6th, Epiphany. In Greece, they would call it Tafota, the lights, the Feast of Lights. In the ancient world, in the early years of Christianity, this feast was one feast together. It was a combined feast. It was called the Feast of Advent or Epiphany, the lights. So the early Christians would celebrate Christmas and Epiphany together as one feast. Later, over time, they got separated into 2 feasts and got drawn out across 12 days. But the feast, it's supposed to be one giant feast from December 25th all the way to Epiphany, January 6th. That's when we're supposed to be opening presents and eating and spending time with friends and family. That's when the fasting stops. Leading up to it, though, it's supposed to be fasting. Now, what is the case? Well, you have all these Christmas parties. Well, maybe not this year with COVID, but you know what I mean? We have all these Christmas parties, workplace parties, friends parties, all this stuff leading up to it that people say, well, how am I supposed to fast, Father? I've been invited to all these parties and there's all this food everywhere. And by the time I get to Christmas, I'm just exhausted. I'm all partied out. And you see that as soon as Christmas happens, what happens the next day? Boxing Day, right? And what do people do? They're out shopping again, and Christmas has become an afterthought. And for people who have like real trees, the trees are already out on the curb by the next day. It's like you just started the feast of Christmas, the Nativity, and you've already given up on it. You've already because you've already been celebrating it like backwards leading up to it. So we're putting the cart before the horse, and we've lost that rhythm. And I think that's a big problem, at least from an Orthodox point of view, because our prayer cycle goes contrary. It runs contrary to what modern society is doing. And so I don't know how to fix that, except just to educate and to remind people that, just wait until Christmas comes. And then when Christmas is there, that's when you're going to feast. Before that, it's all preparation. It's all, fasting and prayer and, preparing ourselves for the coming of Christ.
I think my grandmother was actually Scottish on my mom's side. And I thank her for instilling a tradition where she said, don't take the tree down until what she called Little Christmas. So now we always get a real tree, even though some years it's like, it's done. The tree is done. I do not remove it until the Epiphany for that reason.
Yes. Yeah. Because those two feasts are linked. Yeah. And because they both have the same theme of the revelation of God to the world, because Christ is being born, so he's appearing into the world in human form. And also Christ, then you have this big gap, and then at 30 years old, he shows up and he gets baptized in the River Jordan, and then he starts his ministry. He doesn't start it before that. So again, it's kind of like this inauguration, this opening, this appearance of God. That's why Epiphany or Theophany, the appearance of God. The theme is the same, right? And it's Christ coming into the world and appearing and announcing his appearance and his arrival, and then announcing the beginning of his ministry, right? So it's those two feasts are parallel.
And not to get you off on a tangent, but you talked about the Christmas parties and how Christmas seems to be sort of the afterthought. I've also thought over the last couple of years about how fasting has actually gotten a lot easier, because things like non-dairy alternatives and non-meat alternatives are so readily available that it's become a lot easier to fast, in the sense that there's a lot more options available. And
yet less of us fast. So that's the craziness, is that
that's funny. It is a lot easier than even when we were just
easier. Everything's easier, right? So like everything in our society is easier. We are more affluent than we've ever been. We have cars, so we have rapid transportation to our local church, where in the old days you had to take a horse and buggy or walk miles and miles to your local church. You have the internet, you have smartphones, you have at your fingertips all the writings of the fathers of the church history, dogmatics, everything. So all the theology of the church is at your fingertips for free, right? You don't need to have a library, access to scrolls or books or things like that, right? So it's easier to be a theologian. It's easier to get to church. It's easier to fast. And yet all of these three things are in rapid decline across the world. Because the easier something is, the less incentive human beings have to do it. We tend to gravitate towards struggle, and when things are just given to us, we take them for granted, and so that's unfortunate.
I do hope, though, as a result of this pandemic, not that I'm glad it happened, obviously mortified, but that is one thing, hopefully, that comes out of this, is we realize how many things we've taken for granted, things that we could do, even just going to church and doing things. And hopefully we don't forget those lessons too quickly.
Sure.
Because we will. Okay, that's all the questions we have. So please send your questions to Fr.TEDTalks@gmail.com. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Heads up that there's a live stream on Saints Constantine and Helen's YouTube channel every Sunday. There's also Sunday school videos available for kids.
Yeah, comes out every Sunday. There's a new video. Yep.
Every Sunday. I want to, so Father Ted mentioned my background, but I want to take a moment to thank Sir Patrick Stewart for joining us in the background.
Oh yeah.
And the Enterprise.
Yes, my Captain Picard.
Don't think we didn't notice.
Yeah.
Want to thank him for joining us today. I didn't realize he was Orthodox. Father Ted, do you want to have the last word today?
Merry Christmas. You know, it's early. We're still end of November. We're a month away from Christmas, although everyone's still already putting up their trees, which is wonderful. And people are putting up their trees like much earlier than usual because, let's face it, we have more family time.
I'm going to replace my palm tree with a Christmas tree.
There you go. Yeah, I'll do a digital background next time as well.
Okay.
But we'll try. We're planning on doing perhaps a live stream next Sunday. I think we can do it because I got a pretty clear schedule next Sunday. So we'll be here. Try to send us questions with the live. As you all know, we'll be live on YouTube. People can just write in the comments their questions and we'll answer them live. But we need to have people to be able to answer questions. And of course, we also need to have questions sent to our Gmail account so that we have something to be able to answer, right? So please send us emails this week. We will have a show next Sunday coming up. We will announce it. Well, I'll post it in the Facebook group, and also I'll post a little reminder on the YouTube channel. But it will be probably live in the afternoon. I don't know the exact time yet, but I will find out as soon as possible, and we'll post it. So thank you, everybody, again. Thank you, Tina.
Have a great weekend, everybody, and we'll see you soon.
Take care, guys. God bless.